Hello, everybody. Great to see you, and thank you so much for coming. We're delighted to have you here for the introduction of our 2025 budget. I'm going to do a brief overview. I'll give it over to Nicole, our CFO, to talk a little bit about economic fundamentals across the city and across the country, and then I'll do a deeper dive into each of the buckets of our prioritized spending. I think on the highest level, you can go ahead and roll to the next slide. We are really excited to talk about this year's budget as a chance to prioritize our investments in the most important things facing our city. That is about making sure we have a vibrant Denver, an affordable Denver, and a safe Denver. And how we do that in the midst of what we know will be different economic times as we see softening of some of our sales tax revenues across the city. So what you'll see highlighted in this budget day we're going to talk you through is a couple of key areas of focus. On Vibrant Denver, we're going to talk about the key priority for 2025 around both revitalizing our downtown and opening the 16th Street Mall, which we know is a major economic driver for the city and for the region. We'll talk about our efforts around affordable Denver. We're going to be focused on really expanding workforce housing for folks all across the city who are struggling to be able to pay the rent and stay in Denver, and continuing our efforts at reducing street homelessness. On Safe Denver, we'll talk about our commitment both to increasing our officers and decreasing crime citywide as we build on very successful trends over the last year. We will also update you on significant changes in reductions in the amount of our spending on migrants and the amount of our spending on homelessness, and how the infrastructure we built over this last year will set us up for long-term stability in both of those areas. And then we're going to talk about some new areas of focus around Vibrant Denver, focused specifically on climate and on youth, and how we think those will be important priorities for the year ahead. What you will see overall is that this budget reduces the size of government and reduces the growth of government for the first time in 15 years, other than the one-year aberration of the pandemic. There will be, for the first time, a net decrease of total FTE in the general fund over the last 14 years. We will do that without layoffs or furloughs. We will do it by supporting and investing in our people. We will prioritize the resources we have on the most important needs we know the city has. And so I'm excited to talk to you more about that. Before I jump into that, I want to give it over to Nicole to talk a little about financials and macroeconomics. Welcome back to Econ 101. Your professor, Nicole Doheny.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. My name is Nicole Doheny, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer here at the City and County of Denver. Before we get into the details of the budget, as the Mayor said, I'll speak a little bit about some of the national macroeconomic trends that we really try to think about as we plan for our budget here locally. As you can see here on the left, one metric we track is consumer spending. This is really a driver of one of our main revenue sources, which is sales tax. And as you can see, we had a lot of growth and recovery coming out of the pandemic where consumer spending increased. But that growth has really started to moderate. Similarly, we also track consumer sentiment, which you can see on the right. Consumer sentiment tells us how consumers are feeling and how optimistic they are about the economy. As you can see there, consumer sentiment remains rather low relative to where it was pre-pandemic, and so we're keeping that in mind as we think about our revenue forecasts going into next year. Next slide. A lot of other cities in the U.S. are experiencing very similar things that we are and really seeing the impacts of these macroeconomic trends. In Seattle, they are faced with a $260 million budget gap. In Los Angeles, they've taken a 2% budget cut. In Chicago, they've implemented a citywide hiring freeze. Denver is not immune to these factors. Here in Denver, what these trends mean for us is that our revenue growth for 2025, is projected at 1.1%. You can see that is our lowest rate of revenue growth since the pandemic. The city will also have about $14 million in ARPA funds available, remaining to spend in 2025 and 2026 to supplement these revenues. And I'll hand it back to the Mayor to talk through the highlights of our budget this year.
Okay, let me jump you into all of the fun stuff that you want to hear about in terms of key priorities that we're going to be pushing this year across the city. You'll see these categories of focus we've had that will remain priorities for us. Obviously, we'll talk about a vibrant Denver, affordable Denver, safe Denver, and great government. And you'll see here the overall headline, the $1.76 billion budget proposed is a 0.6% increase on 2024, which, as we acknowledged, is the smallest revenue growth other than the pandemic in the last 14 years. But for us, what we think is this is a huge opportunity to think about how we prioritize those dollars we do have into the most important public services we want to deliver in a really high quality way this year. Go to the next slide. So I want to start by talking about Vibrant Denver and our priorities here. You will see a couple of categories I want to talk about. One is about Vibrant Downtown. We know that downtown is not just the economic engine of the city, it is also the employment engine of the city. About 25% of the city's jobs are downtown. That means the revival of downtown is not just important to the folks that live there or go there, it is important to the folks that work there. And that means if you are a single mom who works at a restaurant, if we cannot support a lunch shift for you during the day, that is income you're not bringing home and bills that you can't pay. And so we think this is a huge opportunity for the city. That's why we'll focus this year both on the opening of the 16th Street Mall, which is scheduled to open next summer, which will be a huge economic driver for us, and the activation of broader downtown Denver. As you know, we're supporting this effort through our teams at Dottie and at Dido. We will also have the opportunity this November, if the Downtown Development Authority passes, to be able to make a historic investment into downtown. I just want to say at this moment, when you have many cities that are walking away from their downtowns, this will represent, if successful, the largest investment in a city downtown per capita of any city in America. And that is intentional. We want to make clear we are signaling we're not walking away from our downtown. We are supporting it. We are reviving it. It'll be a place for people to live. We'll have more residential opportunities downtown. We'll have more parks, more public spaces, and also more activation and more vendors. That's all a part of our priority. But we know there are economic needs for Vibrant Denver across the city. This is why we'll be focusing on both workforce development citywide, making sure folks that are underemployed can get opportunity to family wage jobs. Folks that are unemployed can get the kind of high quality career training and apprenticeship opportunities that our teams will help make available citywide. We also want to make sure that those existing businesses and legacy businesses, particularly women and minority-owned businesses, have the capital and the support and the resources to continue to thrive in this environment. We'll continue that support. We also know we'll have impact on some of our businesses, both on Colfax and on 16th Street, from the coming construction around bus rapid transit on Colfax, as well as on the remaining completions of 16th Street. We'll continue to help support those businesses to make sure they stay vibrant through this transformation and investment infrastructure. A little bit about Affordable Denver. Obviously, three key areas of priority here. We will continue to focus on affordable housing as a need for workforce citywide. We've talked a lot about services for folks that are unhoused in the past year. We will continue that work on our All in Mile High effort. Really important for us to elevate the focus on workforce housing. We know that there are folks working 1 job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs in this city who still cannot afford to live in the city where they work. And we know that is the way you lose a city's vibrance if you can't sustain the diverse population that makes it wonderful. And so we are very focused on making sure we can continue to add, creating, preserving more affordable units, continuing to use rapid rehousing, and keeping the dream of being able to not just rent in this city, but own in this city at the forefront so folks have access to home ownership. We will be expanding our cold weather sheltering this year. We'll be opening cold weather shelters at 25 degrees to make sure we don't have folks at risk during cold weather events. And we will also be keeping those shelters open 24 hours a day so that folks don't have to be displaced every time during the morning when they do that. Continue our focus and expansion on rental assistance and our legal eviction defense support so that people who are at risk of entering homelessness have a chance to stay in that housing and services. And of course, we'll continue our focus on encampment resolution and permanent closures of our encampments. Obviously, we think great progress along these goals. We're at a little more than 1,600 affordable housing units already brought on this year. As you know, now almost 1,900 people that have moved indoors in our All in Mile High effort, and we are on track to be the largest city in America to end street homelessness for veterans this year. So a lot of good momentum in here, not enough yet. We have more work to do. But we think in this we're heading in the right direction. Next slide. Let's talk a little bit about Safe Denver. And here I think also we are very proud of some of the momentum that is happening right now. We know some of the efforts of the last year and 2 years have made a real difference. Already we see almost a 30% reduction so far this year in non-fatal shootings. We've seen more than a 30% reduction in auto theft so far this year. And we have now seen a 95% reduction in catalytic converter theft. So if you were someone who had your catalytic converter stolen, the work of the DPD has had a huge impact on that outcome. So some things you'll see here. We are continuing to invest in our first responders. We will add 168 new recruits to our police department this year. Important to help bring our officer corps back to full strength. We'll add a new class of firefighters. We'll continue to increase our recruitment of sheriff's deputies. We've had great success under Sheriff Diggins this year and almost a more than 500% increase in the size of our classes of sheriff's deputy recruits this year. We want to keep building on that to fill what's been a staffing hole in those locations. We'll continue to expand our alternative responses to crisis. We'll focus still on our effort on roads to recovery, our STAR and co-responder programs, our Solution Center, which helps folks that are in need of crisis support, and our Office of Neighborhood Safety, where you'll see expanded services for folks that don't require direct safety interventions. And then we have piloted this year, which we're very excited about, we will expand next year, our really 5-pronged effort on how we're going to reduce crime citywide. You've heard about our safe neighborhood plans, or as we've called them, our place network investigations, where we're focusing on the entire ecosystem that surrounds locations where we've had high levels of crime, so we can think about where we need lighting, where we need economic development, where we need youth activation, and where we need more officers as a comprehensive approach. We've launched our trust patrols, where we are having officers be able to make stops into businesses and residences to check in with neighbors, hear what's working well, what we can do better. We've already completed more than 119 of these this year. We'll keep doing more of those next year. Group violence intervention is really focused on the places where we have individuals most at risk of committing violent crime or being victims of violent crime, where we want to focus on comprehensive services we can provide to prevent those folks from choosing into crime or from becoming victims of crime. And then our Hot Streets program is focused on increasing patrols in areas where we see increased criminal activity. That program over the last month has already had a great impact, more than 80% reduction on crime on those hot streets where we're doing enforcement. So excited about that progress. And then I mentioned already the increases on auto theft and vandalism. We have now already put in place a little more than 95 of our 111 license plate readers, which we're using to fight auto theft, and they have had a great impact already in terms of being able to more quickly identify stolen vehicles, more quickly recover them, and more quickly return them to people that have lost them. So all good momentum on safety, and we know there's more work to do, but excited about the progress. Two things I want to address, which is I want to talk a little bit about the changes in the expenditures we have made in our newcomer supports and in our homelessness efforts over the last year. We had said these were crises that required response, and in those response, we'd have to build out infrastructure that would require a surge of spending. Then we believed we could return those to long-term, stable, programmatic expenditures, and that's what you'll see here. So what you'll see in our newcomer program is an almost 90% reduction in our budget for 2025 from what we budgeted in 2024. We had proposed a $90 million budget. We're proposing $12 million for next year. That's a decrease of $77 million, but equally importantly, our newcomer program was so successful this year, we actually were able to save dollars in the 2024 year, and that returned more than $20 million back to the general fund. So where 9 months ago we were talking about other departments having to reallocate resources to support our newcomer program, at this moment, our newcomer program is reallocating resources to support the rest of our city departments, which we think is a great development. Huge thanks to our team at DHS and HRCP and others who helped make that incredible work possible. The same is true in All in Mile High. We knew we had to build an infrastructure to bring on units of housing and facilities and staffing to create the infrastructure to provide long-term support. That was why we brought on the 8 facilities. That was why we staffed and resourced them. And that meant that we spent $141 million in 2024. We will reduce that next year by $84 million to what we had presented a couple months ago with Cole's leadership as a $57 million budget for 2025. So just want to name this, for me, is not only a phenomenal success of our city employees who managed these crises and took them from crisis stage to stability stage, but our incredible community partners. I think folks like Yoli Casas at Vive Wellness, Maria Elena at Papagayo, those community partners who stepped in on the newcomer program to help stabilize this. That has been a huge credit to our Denver Asylum Seeker program, to the DIDO team that has helped stand that up because we think that also has really helped people connect them to work, which is what they needed the most, which is why we're able to reduce some of our costs. So just wanted to name that for you as significant changes you will see in the budget, which was as we hoped it would be from year to year. Last one is a bit about our great government focus. Obviously, on the sustainability side, it is a 0.6% increase. We will go from what has historically been about a 200 FTE per year increase in the city size every year to what will be close to a 200 FTE decrease in this year for the first time in almost 15 years. Key in that, there are not furloughs, there are not layoffs. Those are open positions that we are making reductions to be able to make sure we can meet the budget, and what that allows us to do is return those savings back to other programs we can invest in citywide. We also think it's critical to support our employees who have done such an incredible job to carry the city through these tumultuous years. I've named for the employees today. The city over the last 4 years has had more days of emergency activation than the city did over the previous 40 years combined. I'm going to say that again. Our city employees over the last 4 years have seen more days of emergency operation than the city of Denver saw for the previous 40 years before that. We think it's important to both invest in those employees, support them, and retain them. That's why we're proposing a 4% merit increase this year citywide, as we did last year. We'll add an employee wellness day for a little bit more time and effort. We continue a lot of relationship building and partnership building that I'm doing and our team's doing with the cities, with employees citywide. Finally, we're still focused on very high-quality public services. We'll continue to focus on reducing permitting time, increasing safe streets across the city. Our participatory budgeting process will continue, and we will prepare to open this year and pilot an Office of Community Engagement, which will start in HRCP with an effort towards unifying our efforts to engage and empower community all across the city. Last one. There are 2 new and vibrant Denver initiatives we are preparing to launch this year we want to talk to you about because you'll see them as holds in the budget. One of these is around climate and one is around youth. These are critically important citywide priorities for us. We are working right now with the departments and teams that are leading these. On climate, we have 3 areas of focus. One is on expanding both fleet electrification and electric charging infrastructure. We know the major sources of emissions for the city. We want to try to get ourselves back on target to hit our goal by 2030 of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 65%. We were set to be at 40% by 2025. We're only set to be closer to 22%. So we are behind the curve on what we have to do to make a big impact on climate here, and we need to double down to do that. That means fleet electrification, charging infrastructure, working with improvements to Energize Denver to make sure that both stays on course to meet ambitious goal around building reductions of emissions and also implemented in a way that is feasible for all of our building owners to be able to make sure they can own and operate in the city at the same time. And also in this, we're focusing on how do we increase our citizens' use of alternative modes of travel as a way to drive down emissions. So huge thanks to both Amy Ford from Dottie and Liz Babcock from CASRA who helped leading this effort. We named this for you now because slightly differently than in the past, where we announced the goal at 2025 and then started it. Here we are announcing with 4 months to go that these are going to be areas of priority because we're going to spend the next 3 or 4 months working with outside stakeholders, with our internal teams, with partners to help think through what our best opportunity is here for these 2 areas. We have reserved dollars to invest in this strategy in one of our SRFs, but those will be specific goals we'll be prepared to announce to 2025. Same is true for youth. We want to make Denver the best city to raise a child or to be a child, and so we want to look at the comprehensive set of needs that exist around the city and where there are gaps in those services. The ones that come up for us over and over right now that we know are areas of focus are one around childcare. The accessibility and affordability of childcare is a huge challenge for families all across the city. We also know we want to have a continued focus on the quality and accessibility of after-school programming for kids across the city, and are both positive youth development and youth violence prevention as key priorities. And so our team at the Office of Children's Affairs will be working collaboratively with folks here and partners outside of the city to help work on goals and priorities for these 2 areas that will show up as priority goals in 2025. Okay. That is all of the exciting things you wanted to hear about what we're about to do next year. I'm going to let Nicole talk a little bit about the ways in which we balance the budget that you're seeing here in order to prioritize all the key investments you've seen and still provide a fiscally responsible path for the road ahead. And then we'll take questions. Nicole.
Thank you. So as the mayor mentioned, expenditures in our operating budget this year are expected to increase by 0.6%. So that's a comparison to where we expect we will end with expenditures in 2024 to what we're projecting in 2025. As you can see, this is the lowest growth that we've seen other than the pandemic for almost 14 years. Keeping our growth at this size involved several tough decisions, and we spent a lot of time thinking through what we felt were really the fiscally responsible steps in order to achieve this goal. So the next slide highlights a few of the strategies we used. As the mayor mentioned, we took a close look at vacant positions, reduced our spending on supplies, thought through how we could use one-time sources of funding, and also leverage city reserves in accordance with our fiscal policies. We will continue, as we do every year, to actively monitor the economic situation, understand where we're going, and continue to monitor our spending. The next slide is a little bit more detail on the staffing. So as the mayor mentioned, this will be the first time in 14 years, other than the pandemic, where we're seeing a decrease in FTE in the general fund. You can see the history of the general fund FTE growing by several hundred per year, and this year we're looking at an approximately 200 FTE decrease. Finally, outside of the general fund, I wanted to make sure to highlight that we are continuing our capital improvement program. We will continue to invest about $300 million across several areas of priority across the city. As you can see, transportation, parks, building, all investments that are really important to the ongoing vibrancy and some of the goals that the mayor discussed. So Mayor, I'll hand it back to you to close us out.
Great. So I think the most important message for the city right now and for us is we are incredibly optimistic about the financial future of Denver. We think this is the moment to bet on Denver. And we also think we're going to be fiscally responsible with the budget we have right now, but they're all the reasons that we see to be optimistic about long-term growth. And that is what you'll see as the core investments here. What you'll see coming is a reopening of 16th, a reactivation of downtown. Historic investments in downtown put us at a great opportunity to make this one of the most vibrant city centers in the country, which we know drives tourism, drives residential activity, drives commercial activity. The Downtown Development Authority is a tool unlike other cities have available, and so that puts us in a really unique advantage. Our continued effort and focus on affordable housing is going to be transformational. If we can make this the city that is both one of the fastest growing economic engines in the country and as a place where a teacher or a nurse or a firefighter can still afford to live in the city center, that is a magic spot that no city has really found right now. We think we have a path to do that. Obviously, if we can continue significant reductions in crimes, people feel safe in all parts of the city. That is a huge driver on quality of life. And if we can continue to our success around getting folks that are unhoused access to housing, not just in the city center, but all around the city, that has a transformational impact on quality of life as well. And so these fundamentals are all in place to drive long-term economic growth. You add to that the fact that we were just released as right now the hottest employee market in the country. You probably saw come out. You may have seen of young people under 30 in the New York Times survey, the 50 most desirable cities to move. Denver is number 2 on that list. We are the only city in America returning both an NHL MVP and an NBA MVP in the same season. And so whatever metric you want to use, Denver is on the rise in all the right ways. We think this is a chance to prioritize the key investments in the areas we need them the most, while we make sure and be fiscally responsible as we drive our way out of this growth cycle into what we think will be a very positive cycle in the years to come. So with that, I will stop and happy to take questions you may have on any of these topics. Yes?
That number, 168 police officers, sounds eerily familiar to last year's number. So I'm curious, did the department manage to meet your expectations compared to last year and hire 168, or is that just the nature of the turnover of the department?
So I'm happy to answer, and Chief Thomas is here too to add more. The key for us here is the goal on really bringing in 3 full academy classes every year. Last year we expanded to do 3 classes. We want to do 3 classes again this year. The key is then filling each one of those classes to full capacity. We've budgeted to run 3 full classes next year to full capacity, and we're working on, I think, improvements in our recruiting process to make it easier for us to get more high-quality candidates into the pipeline and more diverse candidates into the pipeline. So our target is to do another 3 classes this year like last year. Our classes are not done yet. We have more still to do before the year is out, but we'll keep working hard to hit that number year over year.
So will those classes from this year that are still in the pipeline count towards that?
Oh, no, that's new. So we'll try to bring on 167 or so this year, 168 again next year, because obviously we have people that retire each year. So what we want to do is make sure that our new recruits are outpacing folks that are retiring, so we're net adding to the total actual strength of the workforce on our police department. Chief, anything you want to add on that?
I would just add to that we are on the pathway to get to that 167 number for 2024. So, thank you.
Chief, just with the mic drop, he just comes up and gives the simple answer and walks away.
By around 200 positions without furloughs or layoffs. Which areas or which departments do the majority of that come from?
Yeah, the short answer is they come from all parts of the city, with the exception of they do not come from uniformed officers. And so we are expanding our uniformed officer FTEs across the city, and that is our priority. And other places, they come from all parts of the city. So every one of our other departments in different ways. We worked with the executive directors to identify where the places we had positions that they thought were the lowest priorities in their department and the places that weren't urgent needs. And then this vacancy savings is really focused on how we help prioritize where folks are hiring, and then we can use those dollars to reinvest in other city programs. But that really was a burden that was shared across all part of the city. Questions? I'm just going to go home. I mean, I feel like this is easy crowd. Yes.
Nicole, how much sales tax revenue are we anticipating in '25? I know that's a huge chunk of the budget, more than half, right?
That's correct. So sales tax historically has been about 55% or so of our budget. For 2025, we're projecting $951 million in sales tax.
Mayor, in initial conversations with city council members, what concerns have they brought up about your initial spending plan?
We read very closely the city council letter on the priorities that they had for this budget. We're in very close communication with them regularly, including the president and the president pro tem. And so we feel like there are a lot of real priorities they laid out that you'll see in this budget. They were very focused on wanting us to make sure we had a priority on youth and climate this year. We're excited that those two goals will be reflected here. Other priorities, obviously, for them were around affordable housing and homelessness. You'll see both of those reflected here. They've obviously had a priority around rental assistance that we have continued to invest in at very high levels here. And so we think that we've done a really good job of balancing what we know their priorities are and citywide priorities. I want to return to the FDE question. This is not something anyone does with excitement. I think the key was what we had the conversation with our department leads is, what are the things, if we have to make these decisions, we want to prioritize. And what was clear is we did not want to cut public-facing services. We did not want to cut programs. That would be the other things. As you know, more than 70% of our budget is people. And so if you are going to find ways to create savings, I think selflessly, many of the directors and the team leads said, we want to make sure these programs are prioritized, these investments are prioritized, and if we can each trim a little bit on some of the potential growth on these teams, that makes it easier for us to both protect those priorities without losing public services. Yes?
So with the decrease in the all-in Mile High budget, how much of that is like capital purchases versus like a decrease in operating expenses? This talks about like the success in bringing people indoors, but overall homelessness in the metro area still rose in the past year.
I'm delighted I got a chance to answer that question because I didn't love that slightly inaccurate headline about Denver. It is true it rose regional wide. It did not rise in Denver, and that's in part thanks to our efforts. But let me answer your first question first. You are right that in 2024, we prioritized a great deal of infrastructure building for the all-in program. What we knew we needed was 1,200 available units. So if someone was on the street in an encampment, we could bring them off of that street and into a transitional housing unit. So a lot of the expenditure in 24 was capital to bring on the 8 all-in sites that we have, including the hotels and the tiny homes we had to build. We do not need to make that capital investment in 2025, and that's why now we really just focusing on the programming expenses, which are to run these sites, continue to do outreach, continue to house people, get them connected to long-term housing outcomes. So that's a little bit about the change you see in the spending. We think this budget for 25 still will enable us to be very successful in the programming of resolving homelessness, getting people into transitional sites and getting them up and out into housing. In terms of the total impact, we feel very optimistic and excited about the progress to date. Obviously, we're almost, Cole, 1872, is that right? 1,872 folks who've come off the streets into transitional housing. As I think you've seen, we've reduced family homelessness, unsheltered by 83%. We've reduced total tent homelessness across the city by 52%. And we will be on path to end street veteran homelessness this year. Those are all key early benchmarks you're looking at on the way towards ending street homelessness or making it rare and brief and non-recurring, is what we would call functional zero, where there's no longer an existing street homelessness challenge. So we think, oh, wow, that's my appendix slide. We have a bunch of backup slides in case you asked. Here's a little bit about where we were then and where we are now. So for us, if you look at the delta from where we were 12 months ago to now, we had about 1,500 folks on the streets. We had encampments downtown. We had very few non-congregate shelter options, and we needed to make this big expenditure in 23 to bring on those sites. Now, a year later, we have 8 new non-congregate transitional housing sites. We have 1,200 new beds of capacity, and these are the reductions I was just naming. We have almost about 400 blocks, Cole, of Denver that is now completely closed to camping or tents. And we have this budget that is about an $80 million reduction from where we were last year. So these were all the metrics we hoped we would be hitting 1 year in, and we know there's still obviously more work to do. On what we find now are more of the folks that are in 1s and 2s, under bridges, in sort of in overhangs or encampment or smaller encampments. We don't have really large encampments anymore in the city. The real challenge now is 2s and 3s and 4s and places more dispersed. And our goal is with these 1,200 units, now as we move people into housing each month, those units open up and we can resolve these smaller encampments much more quickly. Yes.
What kind of steps have been taken in that budgeting process, and this may be a question for you, in order to ensure that that 57.5 million doesn't balloon by another 90 million like it did in this year to what I think it was 141. So,
Yeah.
how did you all build 2025's budget to avoid that?
Yeah, great question. If you can talk back to other slides, I think it's a good example. But the real need was the overhead in bringing on infrastructure. It was acquiring, building, developing 8 different all-in sites. And you can remember, in the past, any one of those sites is incredibly hard to build. I think it was a 2 or 3 year effort before I arrived to bring on the tiny home village in Park Hill. That was 40 units. We brought on 1,200 units in just under 6 months. That's an incredible amount of infrastructure, of capital layout, and of things like turning what was a hotel that was designed to have 8 different convenient entrances for everyone you're coming in as a user to a site that needs to be much more secure. We want one entrance, and we want people to have check-ins at the front desk when they come in. We had to retrofit a lot of these sites. That work is now done, and now the work is really the staffing and the programming, the services, the housing navigation, the mental health support, the addiction support, and the street resolution. That's what's in this budget, and that we think is much more stable for our projection of what the services are that are required.
Mayor, the Denver Health ballot measure and the Affordable Denver ballot measure, both of those pass. Will that impact this budget at some point?
Yeah, I'll speak to the Affordable Denver ballot measure. That will have a significant impact on our investment in workforce housing if that passes. If that passes, that puts us on the path to try to do about 4,000 to 5,000 households of affordable housing every year, 4,000 to 5,000 units of affordable housing. That is the goal we would need to hit over the next 10 years to actually meet the total demand in the city. If that doesn't pass, we're on trajectory to do closer to 1,500 units of affordable housing next year. So that would be a massive difference for us. Our goal, we did 3,000 units this year because we used ARPA one-time funding to help do that. Most of that ARPA funding is all expiring this year. So that is a big cliff in spending that will hit our housing department and other departments this year. And so that will have a transformational impact on our ability to create affordable workforce housing across the city if Affordable Denver passes. In terms of the Denver Health measure, I support it in my personal capacity. We did an event to endorse it yesterday. We've been working very closely with Don Lynn, the team at Denver Health, about how to build this budget. You will see here about a 3% expansion in our budget this year for Denver Health, even though the rest of the budget's only expanding at 0.6%. So we want to support them in their success, and we believe that passage would make a dramatic difference for them. If it doesn't pass, we'll be at the table with them working through whatever the other options are, but that would be a far, far tougher outcome for the city and the state if they don't pass.
Mayor, this is a pretty significant reduction for migrant services, but I'm curious, obviously the last couple of times it's happened, it's been an emergency situation,
Yes.
which the city didn't really anticipate though. So what happens if we do see another surge
Great question.
next year?
And I think the benefit of the last year and a half is we've had the chance to build the infrastructure we need to know how to reply to that surge when it comes. And so we do have reserve available if we need to do that. We do have shelter sites that are available if we need to activate them. And we have the apparatus, the playbook, if it were, to know how to respond to those different events. I think presidential election obviously may play into what happens there, but what we feel like is thanks to our team at DHS and our migrant services team, our Office of Newcomer Engagement, we've built a response for any possible outcome. So as you remember, just because you know this issue well, I'm going to give you the complicated answer. There were different waves of the crisis. The early wave had a lot of folks that came with temporary protective status. A new president could decide to extend temporary protective status. That was easiest for us to navigate because we get people work authorization in 30 or 40 days. Later, we had a lot of folks where if this bill were to pass, the bipartisan bill that would have expanded border dollars, that would have increased the amount of customs and border protection individuals that arrived. They arrive also with work authorization, easier to navigate. We've built this current system, our asylum seeker program, based on increased numbers of folks that came with none of that only had the path to seek asylum. and we created work clinics and a training program to get them into work. So we think we have or are prepared for any of those eventualities, whatever might come, and that's what was the key challenge in the last year, was to build that structure. I will say the border policy changes of the Harris and Biden administration have changed our inflow over the last 6 months. I think we've both built a far better system of services, and we have fewer arrivals, and so those have contributed to our success as well.
Can you say approximately how much in reserves, money-wise?
We have prepared about another $10 to $12 million that we could spend out of reserves if we needed to, in addition to the 12 that we have budgeted.
We have time for one more question.
Mayor, the 12.5 billion that you're spending on the newcomer support, where is most of that money going?
Yeah, it's a couple of things. One, it is our asylum seeker program, which is what we've used to help people get access to work and housing options. We've helped them apply for asylum in an accelerated way so they can get work authorization, so it's that program. We're also looking to continue support for work authorization for asylum seekers of all sorts. Yes, folks that have come from Venezuela, but we have asylum seekers in the city that might be from Africa or from Asia or from other parts of Latin America who also are seeking asylum. Those clinics were incredibly successful, and so we want to keep open the opportunity for folks of all arrival locations to be able to get access to asylum clinic services. Okay, well, I would just say thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for your time. I think we feel like this is a moment where we are both very optimistic about the economic future of the city, and we're committed to being fiscally responsible with taxpayer dollars in the short term as we navigate our way out of what we think is a path to get from where we are to where we're going. And this is a way that we're going to make some, I think, really transformational investments in key parts of the city while still providing great high-quality services to all the Denverites, because we know that's what they expect. So thank you all so much for being here, and have a great Thursday.